Yeah, it was great. I mean, the Scotland-England game has been a massive part of my life and my family's life, actually, because my grandpa, George Ritchie, got one cap for Scotland back in 1932, and that was against England down at Twickenham. So I got my first cap almost 60 years to the day on the 18th of January 1992. So it was great. You know, it was the game was amateur, Heather. I was 20 years old. I was playing the second division at Dundee. The biggest crowd I'd played in front of up to that point was 3,000. The week before, I'm playing Dundee against Ayr at Mayfield in Dundee in front of 800 people, and then thrust into Scotland, England at Murrayfield in the Five Nations as it was. And you know, there was a lot of beef between Scotland and England at the time. The Grand Slam was 2 years earlier when David Sowell walked Scotland out, and Scotland won the Grand Slam in that winner-take-all match at Murrayfield, which was amazing. There was the 91 semi-final of the Rugby World Cup at Murrayfield when England won 9-6. So there was a lot of beef between the two teams. And I was just this young kid from Dundee coming in. And, you know, I'd watched the Five Nations as it was on TV. You know, I knew all about my grandpa. And so for me to get my first cap against England was just amazing. And, you know, it was a joy. Everyone said, try and remember it. And I can remember parts of it. And, but it was that wall of sound, that wall of noise, Heather, that I've never experienced anything before that. And, you know, when you play in front of 3,000, you can hear pretty much what everyone shouts. When 58,000 are screaming, you can't hear anything. And I remember turning around to Craig Chalmers, who was my standoff, and I was about to make my first pass in international rugby, and he's screaming at me, and I couldn't hear a word he was saying. Now, every other game of rugby I'd ever played in the 16 years, 14 years I'd been playing rugby, that I'd always heard my standoff. And there in the biggest moment, I couldn't hear my standoff, but I was able to execute the pass. So great memories. It was a fantastic experience. We lost the game. That was almost immaterial for me. It was I'd achieved my goal of playing rugby for Scotland in the Five Nations and against England. David Sowell was captain. I was just, you know, I was in awe of him. You know, I looked around and there was Derek White, there was Gavin Hastings, Sean Linnane, Scott Hastings. You know, I joined the back line. Gary Armstrong was injured, and I got brought into basically the Grand Slam back line. You know, with Craig Chalmers at 10, Scott and Sean Linnane in the midfield, Tony Stanger, Ivan Tukalo, and Gavin at full back. So, you know, for me, it was just a joy to join that illustrious group. So, no, can't remember much about it. I just remember being petrified, but just wanting to get out onto the pitch. And you come out of the changing room at Murrayfield, and you know it was the old stadium. You know, this was back in 1992, so there was a bit of a rabbit warren to walk down, but just running out, the noise that just hit you, it was amazing. I can remember that, and I remember in the anthems, lining up for the anthems. I saw my family in the crowd and my grandpa. Grandpa hadn't been at Murrayfield for 4 years because of his age. And so we got to Murrayfield that day, and that was very special. And I managed to sort of catch them in the stands as we were singing Flower of Scotland. So it was pretty cool. It wasn't emotional. It was excitement. It was pride and but trepidation as well, because we were about to play England. And so it was, it was exciting. I remember that. We had the black tie dinner in the Carlton Highlands Hotel. But this is, I always remember this. It was hilarious that, you know, you think international rugby players would be quite confident, and their self-awareness would be enough that if whatever happened, you know, if they played well, they didn't have to read somebody else's comments. And you're like this, Heather, being in the media, that I was sent out as the youngest member of the squad in the middle of the dinner to get the pink. Now, I remember the pink newspaper used to come out about, I don't know, I'm remembering sort of 9 o'clock or something like that. And it used to have the match report, and it had the marks out of 10. And there you had, you know, international British and Irish lines looking at whatever the thing was, maybe Bill Lothian back in 1992, and the pink was giving, you know, David Sowell as a mark out of 10. And people were getting annoyed when they only got a 5 or a 6. And I found that really, really strange. That's, I remember that's how we, well, not celebrated, but how we sort of had the evening after the game. Man, it was a very different time. What's that, 26 years ago? No, 34 years ago. And it was just very different time. You know, the game was very amateur. Basically, if you gave 100%, the fans respected that, and their expectations weren't that high. You know, for Scott, we don't won the Grand Slam 2 years earlier, but there wasn't the desire. Now, of course, there was the hope that you wanted to do it in the World Cup the night before, the year afterwards, but there was always that you just, if you give your all, the fans were happy. When rugby weren't professional, that changed. That it became a bit more that it was more than that. You're getting paid for it, so you've got to be very good, and you can't show emotion and all things like that. And then social media came in, and I've seen that whole journey of it, and it's social media is brilliant for many things. I don't think for professional sport, at times it's good because you just get that instant feedback. Engaging with your fans, brilliant, and I think that's a great thing. And I've got two daughters that engage with a lot of people, not just sport, but in society and pop and what have you. And it's brilliant for that. But I'm glad I didn't have to play
You
through social
captained
media.
Scotland against England. I think it was at 2000 when you captained them, and you won that game.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We had no right to win that game. We'd played 4 games, lost 4. This was the first year of the Six Nations. So Italy had been admitted. Scotland, we'd won the last 5 nations in 1999. And then we played Italy first up, lost that. We lost to Ireland, lost to Wales, lost to France. Ian McGeechan made me captain for the England game, and they'd won 4 games. So they're going for the Grand Slam at Murrayfield. And they were a great side, building up to their 2003 World Cup win. And they were phenomenal. The weather was pretty horrendous that day. It was wet, it was windy, it was sleet, and that helped us in without a doubt. And we played on that. We used it. Duncan Hodge scored all 19 points. We got ourselves in front, and we just held on. And it was just amazing because we hadn't beaten England in 10 years. We hadn't beaten England since David Soul's Grand Slam winning team in 1990. So the expectation was not there. So then when we had a chance, the atmosphere in Murrayfield was incredible, Heather, at the end. And remember when it was so wet and the pitch was just covered in water that you didn't want the ball. So I just kicked everything, and then we just tackled England. And every time we tackled them, the crowd cheered as if it was another try. It really was incredible. And then we final whistle went, and we had won 1913. And I got the distinct and unique honour of going up the steps at Murrayfield to get the Calcutta Cup from Princess Anne, who still is the patron of Scottish rugby. And I'm the first Scotsman ever to lift the Calcutta Cup at Murrayfield, because prior to that, it was only ever presented at the dinner. So when David won it, when Solly won it in 1990, he got presented at the dinner. So I got it in 2000. So I'm the first Scotsman, which I'm very proud of.
Obviously, when you're making a debut for Scotland, you've got a certain feeling, which you described really well. But moving on those years to 2000, and then being captain, and then going up the steps with the Calcutta Cup, what was the change for you in sensation? How much did you feel that you'd actually kind of grown as a person and also as a player?
I think the age factor. I was 29 years old, so a bit more experienced. I'd played down at Bath. We'd won the European Cup. Again, I was lucky enough to be captain when we did that. Experience and age allows you to look at things differently, maybe appreciate things a bit more, understand a bit more. And, I knew how important it was. It was always important, but, when you're 20, 21, you just think it's everything. Whereas actually in 2000, was born 3 weeks earlier, and it's amazing how having children just changes your outlook on life. And so a lot of what happened in 2000 I can really remember because I really enjoyed it and I really made myself enjoy it. And so the memories are there, but I think a lot of that is down to experience and just being a bit more mature, a bit more worldly wise and understanding. We had some players making their debut that day, and it was just a whirlwind for them, and it was great. And Jason White was one of those players, and I was just saying to Jace, just soak it in, soak it up, just enjoy it. It's not always like this, believe me. And I think that's the great thing about rugby. You've always got some experienced players. So David Soul, Sean Lanine, Gavin, and Scott. They were able to give me that influence, that experience that they'd had when I've got my first cap. That's those with torches pass them on, don't they? And so I find as a senior player that was a role. and that'll still happen today. Young players come into the squad, and it's the experienced, seasoned pros that will show them how to do it. Role models are still a really important part of rugby, and seeing how a great professional conducts himself on a day-to-day basis is a really good way for these guys developing themselves.
What do you make of Gregor's squad, and also looking at some of the young talent like Freddie Douglas, for example, that's come on board? The fact that there is that mix. I mean, there has always been a mix of youth and experience, but it does feel like there are more younger players and coming through the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, I've been critical of the pathways in Scotland, that we've just not produced enough good young kids in the last number of years. But there's good ones coming through. Gregor Brown, Max Williamson have come through. Freddie Douglas, as you say, Ben Muncaster. Some good forwards there, and that's the key here for me. Because maybe as a nation, we're good at producing backs, but not big forwards that can really make an impact in international rugby. Which, sadly, that is the way the game's going. You look at the top sides in the world: South Africa, France, the last couple of years, Ireland in their heyday, and England. Big forward pack. You need that, and so having good young forwards coming through is good, and that's why again, confidence levels a bit higher for this Six Nations, because there's a bit of strength and depth there. Barring Xander Fagerson, there's some big. Every position's covered with real quality, and some big lumps that can come off the bench and make an impact. Rugby now, it's all about the 23-man squad. It is all about the impact that the bench can play. And, that's where we've fallen down over the years. We've got a good squad that can come off the bench and really make impact.
Gregor Townsend's job, is it on the line if Scotland don't perform this Six Nations?
Gregor's job seems to be on the line with every game, quite frankly. And it's, he's under pressure, there's no doubt. But it's amazing how Scottish fans, it's like when you've been there for a number of years, they want change, or sort of one mistake and it's the demand change. Listen, this is a well-coached team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Gregor is a very good coach. I think he's proven that over the years. And this team looks like a team that is very together, the squad and the backroom staff, the coaching staff, medics, all that. It just seems a well constructed squad. And that's one sort of metric that you got to look at. They just need to close out sort of the big games. And going back to what we said at the start, is that a mentality issue? But what I do know is that he thinks he's got the best squad he's ever had, and he's got the strength now. He's got options to look at. There's things that he can do tactically, selection wise, if he wants to change up from one game to the next. And so, now what's good? That comes back to it's a perception, isn't it? For a lot of people, they'll see if we finish third, that'll be deemed a failure, and they'll still be calling for Gregor's head. And that is a reality of where we're after 8 years. You're always going to get that sort of pressure. As I said earlier, finishing third for Scotland, I think is success. I really do.
In terms of yourself, though, Andy, you're going to be a busy man.
Yeah, I'm doing a couple of matches for Five Live, the Wales and the Ireland games as well. So yeah, excited about that.
You've got a big event that you're putting on.
Yeah, we're creating the Andy Nicol Clubhouse, which is basically an indoor fan zone at the EICC in Edinburgh, in the city centre. And it's a chance for Scotland and England fans to come into an indoor environment, warm, with toilets, with good bar facilities, 3 massive screens. Myself and Will Greenwood are going to be hosting, giving our analysis. So big long trestle tables. Think the darts, but without the fancy dress, or you can wear fancy dress if you want. And and they can wear their Scotland shirts with pride, because it's indoor. I mean, you don't have to be outside in the freezing cold Scottish winter. So it's going to be very exciting. We've got 3 ticket levels that you can go. The website is andynicholsclubhouse.com, and all the details are there. It's open to everyone, so families, children, grandparents, the whole lot. If you've not got tickets, so you don't know what you want to do for the Calcutta Cup, come to Andy Nicol's Clubhouse.
It's quite different, and it's a big space as well, by the way, which is really nice, because a lot of these things happen and they get so packed, you just kind of think, I can't bother with this, I'm going to go somewhere else.
So since I stopped doing the BBC commentary for Six Nations, I've just not enjoyed Murrayfield, the experience of Murrayfield. And that's not saying there's anything wrong with it. The atmosphere is brilliant at times, but I've just not enjoyed it. And a lot of my friends and people I've spoken to have felt the same. And then, I just thought there's a way. Everyone loves coming to Edinburgh for that Six Nations match, and you either sit home watching it, or you go into a pub and it's cramped and you don't get the commentary. And then the final piece in the jigsaw, the sort of creative jigsaw that was in my head, was with the Lions last summer. I was hosting the Lions Den in for the three tests, 6,000 Lions fans in a big convention centre, all wearing red. And I just thought, this is something we could replicate. So that's where the idea came. That a lot of people can't afford the tickets at Murrayfield. A lot of tickets are not accessible for people to get to Murrayfield, but they want to be part of a community watching the game. So I just thought it was we surely can create a great match day experience without actually being in a match, and that's where the ideas come from. As I say, indoor fan zone. People can wear their Scotland shirt with like-minded people, having a bit of fun, a few beers, a few drinks if they want, and hearing from myself and Will Greenwood, and just watching the commentary. We'll do halftime analysis and full-time analysis, and then we'll start the sing song with 500 miles, Sweet Caroline, and Loch Lomond.